Welcome to the literature review session. This topic we are going to be reviewing in 2 different weeks. Today is going to be the first video about this topic. The review of the literature is part of the process of research that we have been studying during the semester. It's located here in the second step, okay, between the research problem and the research purpose. We already talked about the step 1 and 3, but if you notice, you have to find and read many bibliographic resources in order to work in your research problem. What happens is that the literature review and the research problem usually are 2 steps that you work together at many times at the same time. What we're going to do now is to extend that first review of the literature. We're going to extend that research, and that's going to be your second report. In these 2 classes, this video and the following week, we're going to be reviewing some general information of what things you have to consider when you develop a literature review, and then some practical tips that you can use to order and organize all the information that you're going to be collecting in order to have a deep understanding of your research topic. If you want to have a general definition of the literature review, let me go back a little bit. What we want you to do here. First, that you select the main sources that are related with your research problem. You have to summarize, okay, that information, and then hopefully you can evaluate or critically evaluate that information in order to understand what is already known, or what are these gaps or little gaps of information that probably your research is going to be contributing to that field of knowledge. As we have in studying this semester, we have some differences between all the steps of the research process, thinking on a quantitative perspective of research or a qualitative perspective. This happens also in the literature review. What happened in the quantitative literature review is that it's mostly static and prescriptive. Okay, the literature review in this type of research is very important, and we're going to see in a moment that are mainly is going to provide you with the based theories that you are going to be trying to prove with your research. When we're thinking in a qualitative type of research, the literature review is more dynamic, okay, and takes a role of being informative in your study, okay. It is important, but you mostly take it as a reference. If we want to think on a definition of a literature review, we can think that is this process that individuals use to locate, read, synthesize, and critique the literature available in a topic. So these are like the main things that you have to be doing when you work on this part of your thesis, okay? First, locate, review it, read it, and you synthesize. And that's what we expect to see in your report, okay? And also, if you can critique what is known, what are these elements that probably we need to know more, okay? The literature review is this written synthesis of journals, articles, or books and other documents that are going to summarize and critique the past and the current state of information about your research topic. And also it's important that organize the information, okay, into subtopics. That's something that we want to see in your thesis and in your draft, okay? The idea is not a whole document that you start and finish with just one title, literature review. You organize the information, and that's part of what we're going to be looking in the next week class, okay? Usually you're going to find the literature review in an article in the first part, okay? What we call, usually you find it as the introduction, okay? Usually you will have in journal article, the first paragraph or the first two paragraphs are going to be the statement of the problem, and then comes a whole part that's going to be the literature review, okay? Usually the names in a journal article are the literature review, the background of the study, or the conceptual framework, okay? That's all the very common ways to identify it in an article. Now, these are two questions that you usually hear from students. Okay, what is the length of this document, okay? And also, how many articles should they include? We're supposed that we have to review what we know about the specific topic that we're researching. These are very common questions, and I find it a very good way to answer this with this comic. Students go to the professor's office and ask him, how many references do I need to include, Professor Jones? And he says, well, and he show student this graph. If you see, we have here the number of references, and here in this axis, the academic value of the work, okay? So here we have very few amount of references, and here you have a lot of references, or work with a lot of references. And we have like a balance point here, okay? If you don't develop a good review and checking a minimum amount of references, probably the people will think that you are making things up. But in the other hand, if your work is full of references, you just copy and paste and put everything from these many different sources, probably people will think you're an original, okay? You're copying too much. So what is the optimal number of references is this balance point, the middle point here, okay? So the student asks, what's the optimal amount? And the teacher says, like, a few. That means that we don't have like a real number, okay? A real number of references that you should include, but I'm going to provide you with a couple of reference number, okay? Here is another way to show you the number of references. We have this model that you can predict the number of references that you need. If you put the number of pages that you are going to be writing, you can predict, and if you solve this equation, you're going to predict the number of references. But if you see these red dots here, we see that the number of references in the different fields are different. In this graph, we see the length of the articles, and we see that for example, in medicine, we usually have like a very short reports with a certain amount of references, okay? That's in medicine, but if we see in the humanities and social sciences, we usually tend to write longer reports and use sorry. We tend to write longer reports and have more amount of references. So that's something that we used to do in social sciences. Now, if we think in a doctoral thesis, usually you expected to see like close to 100 references in that thesis, okay? For a graduate, like a master degree, probably you're going to expect like 60 to 80 references. In your case, okay, that you are finishing your first degree, probably a good amount that you finish reviewing at least 40 to 60 references when you finish your thesis, okay? Now, in this semester, you're working in your research project, okay? Just your first review of literature. So if you finish, you end this semester reviewing, I think, between 25 to 35 references, I think that's a really good amount of reviewing. And that's going to provide you with enough information to have a good understanding of your research topic. Now, I told you before that we're going to divide this class into different videos, okay? In this first video is going to be more conceptual, okay? We're going to talk about these two topics about the importance of the literature review and some steps that you can use to start collecting and identifying those key research for your topic. Next class and next video is going to be with more practical recommendations that you can use to synthesize and write the literature review, okay? And also we're going to go and I'm going to explain the specific the rubric, okay, and the indexes that are going to be considering to review that work. Now, the first topic of this video today is going to be about the importance of the literature review, and we're going to see these 5 key elements that we have to be aware of what we had to, why we have to do this work in any review. The first element here is that the literature review provides you a justification for the research problem. Well, I think we know about this because we already finished your first draft that was your research problem. And like I told you before, you already developed an initial review of the literature trying to identify key research that provides you enough information to justify the importance of your research problem, okay? So the first step, we already went through it. The second one is that the literature review is going to provide a documentation about what is and what is not known about your topic, okay? Usually the researchers are going to include in the literature, in the reports, to demonstrate that they are sufficiently aware of other research that is written, okay? All the information that is related with your topic, okay? The idea is that you demonstrate that you know like the key literature that is related with your topic, okay? Also, by knowing what is known about your topic, also the researchers are going to state the knowledge that probably is missing, okay? And your work is going to contribute to provide more information about that missing information in your area, okay? The third element about the importance of the literature review is that you have to identify the theory of the conceptual framework behind your study topic, okay? And again, this is very important when we are thinking in a quantitative type of research. In a quantitative study, the theory explain and predict the probability relationship among different concepts, and or we can say variables that we know that are important in a quantitative type of research. Okay, so you have to know what the theory says about how your variables, okay, this concept that you want to research about, are explained and how they are related based on the theory. So the researchers in this type of study use the literature to document and describe the important elements in the theory, okay? And they may include a figure to illustrate that theory, okay? Like the conceptual framework with some kind of graph or figure, okay? The use of a theory from the literature provides a sound basis for the study selected variables. So that's going to provide you or it's going to justify why you are selecting those variables, okay, and how you can predict some results based on that previous theory. When we think in a quantitative type of research, okay, we use the literature to have a reference conceptual framework that's going to inform the assumptions or beliefs that you're going to consider in your study, okay? In this type of research, okay, the researchers do not intend to test a specific theory, okay, but they need to identify a theory or conceptual framework to guide how they're going to think about the study topic, okay. That's going to be your reference. The conceptual framework is going to represent this philosophical perspective or advocacy of or social justice stance on behalf of the marginalized groups, or a particular way of viewing the knowledge that the researcher used to inform the study. Okay, so it's going to be your reference framework that you're going to consider to implement your study. The next element important in the literature review is that it's going to provide these models for the methods, okay, and procedures. So we're trying to think forward, not just like reviewing and knowing about the theory related with your topic. Now, taking some references to the next step is going to be your research design, okay? Thinking about the methods that you're going to be using. The researchers use the literature to provide these models and how to design the study, okay? And then also how to collect and analyze the data. Probably we are not going to advance much in these two elements, but that's going to be very important when you implement your research project. Also, researchers use literature to justify the choice of the study research design. Okay, we're going to talk about that in the next following classes. Our decisions about how they select the people or the participants of the study. Okay. And the last important element to consider in the literature review is that by reviewing similar reports than your research, it's going to provide your guides to interpret results. Okay. When you finish your gathering your data, and you run some analysis, then you have to interpret your results. And having as a reference the results from other similar studies is going to help you to have a better interpretation of those results. Okay. By doing that, researchers cite the literature that in the final section of the report, and they compare new results, okay, with the past studies in the literature. Okay. or also examine the overall meaning of the new results from the existing literature. So when you implement your research project and you have your data and you run your analysis, like I said, this is going to be a very important step in this process. Now, if we look at the different steps in the research process, okay, starting with the research statement of the problem, and then with the discussion on the conclusions of your report, okay, you see that these 5 elements that I was explaining in this video are all over this step of research, okay? So that's why it's important, okay? The literature review is going to be a key element throughout all your research, okay? From the identifying the problem to the final part of your thesis, that's going to be the discussion and conclusion, okay? Now, I wanted to also present this figure that kind of tell you that the thinking in quantitative and qualitative type of research, usually the literature review is more important in a quantitative type of study, okay? We said that it's more prescriptive, okay? In a qualitative, it's more informative, okay? It's important in the quantitative study to identify and understand the variables, okay? It's going to provide the rationale of the study, and also it's going to provide some guidance to understand the relationships between the variables that you're going to be using in your research. In a qualitative type of study, it's more informative and dynamic, provides you a good framework, okay, as a reference to know how to address these uh, the things that you want to study, okay, in your qualitative type of study. And also when you start working in the field and when you analyze your data, it's going to help you to describe the meaning of your findings. Now, the second part of this video is more practical elements that you can use to start working in your literature review. Like I said, in the next video, next week, we're going to review these elements and also going to provide you with other practical tips that you can use to organize, okay? But with these 4 elements that I'm going to explain in a minute, you can start like working and collecting the information. So these are 4 steps that you can use to start with this process of literature review. We're going to explain in detail each one of those. The first one is to identify the key terms related with the topic. Okay, this sounds like very simple, but it's not that simple. These key elements have to be these very specific words that you can use to or you can put in a database searcher. Okay, and it's going to show you like specific works that are related with your research topic. Okay, so when you identify these key terms, you are going to be able to identify and narrow this this search, okay, and being very specific with your topic. Usually are going to be 1 or 2 words, or could be short phrases, okay, that you can use to search very precisely. To identify these terms, okay, here are 3 strategies that you can use. Think in a preliminary working title for your projects. Okay, that's part of what I'm asking you when I ask you to try to develop a title. Okay, and from the title you select 2 to 3 keywords. Probably that's going to provide you with some elements. Okay, use the words that you find use it in the literature. When you find works that are very similar with the idea of your research, probably you have to pay attention to the keywords that they're using in that research. Okay, and then list synonyms in relation with your topic. Okay, so these are 3 ideas that you can use. Then you have to go to the database that we learned how to use it. Okay, could be Google Scholar or any database that we look that are available in the library website, or could be ERIC as well. Okay, so go and search in those databases. That's going to provide some initial information, okay, that you can use. It's important that you consider, okay, to limit your research to recent literature. Hopefully, the last 5 years, or at most last 10 years, okay? That doesn't means that you can consider like classical works in relation with your topics, okay? But most of your literature that you're going to be using, hopefully in the last 10 years, okay? Much better, last 5 years. Okay, if you want a reference, I could say that hopefully like 80% of your literature is from the last 10 years, and hopefully 50 to 60% from the last 5 years. Begin your search by looking with journal articles. So we're going to see that this is important because it's going to provide you with some good quality research that you can use as a reference. Okay, and then keep trying new combinations of key terms that you find in the literature. Okay, that initial search is going to provide you with better terms. Okay, more specific. The third element that you can consider for your initial search, okay, is that you select the literature that is relevant and have a good quality. Okay. Research is relevant when it includes the information that is pertinent to your topic. Okay, so it needs to be very specific in relation with your topic. I think we talked about being specific when we meet as a research group and discuss your first draft, okay, your research problem. And I remember that I told to many groups the importance of trying to be more specific. Okay, here it becomes important. This is specificity. Okay, some guiding questions that you can use to find this relevant literature could be this: does the source focus on the same topic as the one in which you are interested? Does the source examine the same individuals? Okay, so the topic and the participant individuals, okay, or sites that you want to learn about it. Does the source examine the same research problem that concerns you? So it's important that you find very specific reference literature, okay? Now, when we think about the quality, okay, it's important that we try to guide our work with original reports, okay? Hopefully, these original reports are peer-reviewed, okay? That means that it went through a process of review from people that are specialists in that topic, and they, because they know about the topic, so they can ensure that that work have the minimum quality to be published, okay? So, and also it's important that these sources comes from sources that are known to be reputable, okay? Usually, for example, a website, we don't know what is the sources, okay? So it's not a good idea to just search in websites. So prefer original sources versus secondary sources. Prefer peer-reviewed versus not peer-reviewed. And also think in how reputable is the source that you're using to consult on your work. This chart is very good because kind of provides you with in detail with the quality sources that you are going to be using. And for example, we have here in this column the type of literatures, okay, and how old they are, okay. For example, the newer material, you're going to find it in dissertation, thesis, conference papers, or technical reports. We tend to think that these are original reports, but many of those are not peer-reviewed. Okay, okay. The thesis they go through a process, but it's more like internal within a university. When we think in a journal, they send it to a reviewer. That usually is a blind review. We don't know who reviewed that, so that can ensure us that is going to be a very objective review. Okay. How reputable are these sources? Usually, we don't know. It depends on the university and how what is the trajectory of those sources. Okay. What is the if it's a technical report? It depends on the institution that's going to provide that report. Many times we can't ensure that that report is going to be an objective report, okay? Because there are many interest within that organizations that are going to mandate to develop that report, okay? Then we have the journal articles that are my recommendations that you can use most of these type of sources for your thesis, okay? And you're going to see that most of the journal articles, if you check the references, most of the references comes from a journal article, okay? These are research reports, literature reviews, like systematic review of the literature, or theoretical discussion, okay? The research reports are these original sources, okay? The literature review or theoretical discussion, they take many works in relation with that research topic and they analyze it, okay? But it's not an original information because they take what is known about and they synthesize and they could come out with a new explanation about what we know about, but it's not their data, okay? That's why we say that this comes from secondary reports, okay? All of these sources are peer reviewed, okay? And it's going to depend, depending on the journal, how reputable is it, okay? And then the books also are very good materials. Usually they have they go through an editing process that can ensure that it's a good material, okay? But the information is not that current, okay? It have to go through some years before you can see in research results in a book, okay? So these are different material. Usually the authors of this material, they take sources from many different authors. That's why it's a secondary source, okay? There's some type of studies that comes from a big study and they then come out, they prepare a book, and that in that cases could be original, okay? Usually they go through an editing process. There's an editor, but it depends on the type of source if it's going to be peer review or not peer review, okay? And how reputable is going to depend by the publisher. The fourth element that you can use to start with your literature review process, and this is very important, okay, is that when you find a very good report, okay, that is similar with the ideas, okay, when you find that it's going to provide you with very good information for your report, it's very good idea to take notes on the key aspects of this selected source, okay? So it's kind of making a summary Okay, we're going to call it a summary notes about this quantitative or qualitative research. Okay, to systematically record the same set of information. Okay, and here are 6 elements that I recommend you to identify in those sources. Okay, to summarize. Okay, those results. The first is that you record the complete reference of the source. Second, identify the research problem that they're trying to address. Third, identify the objective or the purpose, the research questions, and the hypothesis. Those are going to be very good models for you, okay, for your work. Go and check the data collection procedures. That's going to also provide you with some models for your methods. Try to list the major results and findings in that report. And also you can make your own comments about the study. And you can create like a chart, like, let me see, a chart like this one, that you collect all the information with all these key sources that you're going to use as a reference. Okay, this is a good way to have a systematic review of the literature that is going to be a key literature in your reports. Good. With that, we are going to finish with this report and this video. Okay, that's going to be the first part, and in the next week we're going to see the second part of this class, and we're going to see some practical ideas that you are going to be using for your own work. Okay, I hope that you have enough information that you can start using to start working in your literature review. And I hope to see you in classes. Bye bye.